Welcome to Harry's Hook. I am a journalist, big fan of boxing. I've written published articles on it. I also train and spar. We've got a hot matchup at 168. It's got me sweating. Many might be snoozing. David Benavidez versus Demetrius Andrade. Two undefeated, sometimes avoided fighters, with the winner ideally facing off against Canelo. In today's video, I'm going to preview the bout, talk about the boxers, advantages, disadvantages, some X factors that could determine the outcome, and then ultimately give my prediction. But first, if you enjoy this content, do me a solid, like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, all that good stuff. I appreciate your support. Let's start with the favorite, the Mexican Monster. Some top line numbers for you. Benavidez is 26 years old, he's 27-0 with 23 knockouts, stands at 6'2", with a 74.5-inch reach. He stalks his opponents, often with a high guard, and unloads flurries of punches over the course of the fight, wearing them down both physically and mentally. In short, he's a tall, high-volume pressure fighter. Demetrius "Boo Boo" Andrade is 35 years old, he's 32-0 with 19 knockouts, stands about 6'1", with a 73.5-inch reach. He is a skillful southpaw who has some pop on his punches, tends to start fast, and then is generally content to outbox his opponents. One solid advantage in Boo Boo's favor is that he is the more skilled boxer. He has a much deeper amateur pedigree. He's got better footwork. He's got a better jab. He's just more refined on both offense and defense. Because really, Benavidez at the end of the day is a rather direct pressure fighter. He tends to plod forward, cover up with a high guard, and once he gets his opponent against the ropes, he often squares up to unload his furious combos. Now, squaring up will allow you to fully unleash both hands, but it also leaves you vulnerable to counters. With Benavidez leaning forward on the front foot as he pressures, he's going to have to be cautious about Andrade's sharp uppercuts, which he used liberally against a forward-leaning Liam Williams. Plus, Benavidez does sometimes lean in to fire quick jabs or lead rights. It can catch an opponent off guard, but it's also a good opportunity for Andrade to counter. And as I mentioned before, Andrade has much better footwork than Benavidez, who will sometimes walk while moving forward. He'll bring his feet together, which compromises balance. While Andrade's defense certainly is more well-schooled than that of Benavidez, and CompuBox data actually would suggest that Andrade has one of the very best defenses in all of boxing, that data and claim of Andrade having a great defense is a bit undermined by his lack of high-level competition. His defense does have its holes, and ultimately, I think that the volume of Benavidez can spring some leaks in it. For one thing, Andrade will sometimes wing that rear hook and leave his chin exposed. It's a dangerous punch for the opponent, no doubt about it. Andrade has scored some knockdowns with it. But it is something to watch to see if the Mexican Monster can take advantage of the opening. Look, Andrade has a solid defense. It's just that he's no Shakur Stevenson. He's been caught before, and even in his most recent fight against Demon Nicholson, he was apparently dropped with a body shot in round 5, though the ref ruled it a slip, so it is a bit in question. No offense, who the hell is Demon Nicholson? And that speaks to the larger issue of Andrade's lack of quality opposition. But to be fair, Benavidez doesn't have many good wins on his resume either. But his last one over Caleb Plant is probably better than any of Andrade's. But while Andrade has the skill advantage, high volume plus pressure can really cause problems for boxers. It's a style that takes a lot of energy, and so that leads me to an advantage for Benavidez, and probably his greatest weapon, that motor, that gas tank that allows him to keep marching forward and throwing punches throughout the fight. Whether it's a German engine, nuclear fusion, or just a lot of carbs, he's top 5 in all of boxing according to CompuBox data for average total number of punches landed per round. One of the ways he racks up those punches is on the inside, an area that Andrade will need to be wary of because Benavidez will make the fight ugly at close range and fire shots when opponents aren't always expecting it. and volume punching is generally favorable on the scorecards. However, while a pressure fighter tends to have the stylistic edge over a pure boxer, the danger for Benavidez is that Andrade really is a boxer puncher. Sure, he has 19 knockouts in his 32 wins, and that doesn't necessarily scream big puncher, especially considering Andrade's lack of elite opposition, but he does tend to score knockdowns, especially early in fights. In fact, his last 5 opponents have tasted canvas. He's got a few stoppages in his recent fights, but a lot of times after hurting an opponent, he tends to get comfortable or go on autopilot or just get drained after his follow-up attacks don't finish the job. But that doesn't mean he's pillow-fisted. I think he has legit power that just winds up waning later in the fight along with his stamina. However, Benavidez does have the on-paper tail-of-the-tape advantages. He's younger by about 9 years, he's slightly taller with a bit of a longer reach, plus he's been at super middleweight and was WBC champ. This is only Andrade's second fight in the weight class after moving up from 160. Now let's talk about some X factors. The chins, or more broadly, punch resistance. Both of these guys have been dropped, and they both have power. So this is a dangerous fight all the way around. But with Andrade being 35, and seeing him get wobbled in some recent fights, I tend to give this edge to Benavidez. And I think that he'll need it, because if we're asking the question, who strikes first? I believe that Andrade, with his skills, is going to connect with a good blow before the monster. But Andrade hasn't always been a good finisher. So if Benavidez can get through that storm, I believe that he can rally and turn things around. Ring rust. Now, neither of these boxers has been terribly active. We could say, though, Benavidez has been a bit more active. Plus, he's younger, so that bodes better for him, because generally speaking, older fighters take longer to shake off the ring rust when they're in a fight. On its surface, for many people, this is a fairly straightforward pick, but I've got to say, I've wrestled with it. And this moment is a culmination. It really is everything for Demetrius Andrade, or at least for his story. He's never gotten the big fight, and this is easily his biggest moment. At 35, it really all comes down to this. If he finds a way to beat Benavidez, then the narrative around Andrade and his career becomes totally different than if he loses. If he wins, Andrade was always an excellent boxer who was avoided throughout his career, and for good reason. If he loses, Andrade was a fighter who always looked good to the eye, but was never tested, and when the time came, he fell short. I believe Andrade will probably hurt, or maybe even drop Benavidez at some point in the first half of the fight. And if he does, there's the real possibility that he could get the stoppage or pull off a decision win. And all told, I probably would have picked Andrade, but for the fact that I have real questions about his ability to take a punch, lack of experience at 168, and his gas tank against the pressure that Benavidez will bring. Andrade's defense is good, but he's not untouchable, especially during those messy exchanges on the inside that Benavidez does such a good job with. He has less margin for error, has been less active, and it's only his second fight at a higher weight class. I want to believe in the Cinderella story, and I think Andrade has the ability to pull off this upset, but it would be an upset. I think Andrade wins the first half of this fight, but Benavidez overall has a solid chin, and Andrade isn't the best finisher. I think the Mexican monster, with his youth, engine, relentlessness, volume, winds up catching Andrade and getting the late stoppage. And God willing, a fight against Canelo. And that right there is Harry's hook. Let me know what you think in the comments. Who do you have winning, Benavidez versus Andrade? And how do you think the fight plays out?